What up? Testing one, two. Okay, it's working. Okay, so this is just gonna be a quick video about UVs, right? So if you don't know what UVs are, I don't know why you're here. No, I'm just joking. So one of the issues that people run into when they're dealing with stuff, especially when you first start making your own uh, clothing or whatever, whether you're using a tool, whether you're using something else, you might get some weird UVs, right? So I'm going to start off with this shirt here and kind of show you what I would do. What I also suggest people do is to set up a quick checker pattern. You can do that by just looking for this node here, search for checker, right? And then you want to get a texture coordinate node and a mapping node. If you've got, I think, Node Wrangler turned on in your properties in Blender, you can just hit Control T and you'll get that. But just set it up. I set it to like a scale of like 5, but you just want it to have checkers, right? If you just set it at 1, you might not get a good idea of what's actually happening. So I set it to 5 just for my example, but you can make it whatever size. Okay, so UVs are pretty much, and this one doesn't have any seams on it, right? There's no seams on this thing at all. Right, if I go into this mode, you can see there's no like little red marks, which is the default color for seams. If I hit A, you'll see that I do have a UV map because what I did with this one is I just went to UV, Smart UV Project, hit OK, and that's what it gave me, right? If I just do a regular UV unwrap, I'll get this. When the engines and most tools try to unwrap things, they're going to try to make sure everything is connected and give you the flattest version of that as possible. If I zoom in real quick, you'll see I have like a neck hole and 2 little armholes, and this just isn't it, right? I can't really do anything with this. If I turn this back to here, you can see that the UV does not look correct at all. So one of the things you want to do is fix that. And the easiest way is just start with how you would look at like a shirt, right? And then it's okay to also add um, edge loops if you need to, right? So I could use Alt and then click on this edge loop and it'll come all the way up to here, and then I can grab this one and then I can right click and make sure I'm using the edge selection option, hit mark scene, right? Now if I hit A and go up here to UV unwrap, you'll see something has changed, right? Um, I can do it on the other side as well and do it like that, mark seam, hit A, UV unwrap, right? And now you see that it's split my um my shirt, right? To make it flat, it just laid it out flat as if I cut it with scissors. And my sleeves are connected, everything's connected. Now this is the format you want, feel free to use that. I usually turn things like on their side so that they're straight. And I'm just using R as the quick tool for that. Um, and now if I go to my stuff, you can see I've got a shirt that looks pretty solid, right? That looks pretty good, right? Now, the UVs won't always match up along the sides, and that's usually fine, especially with clothing. I used to want it to match perfectly, but most clothes aren't even like that, so it's not really an idealistic thing. Also, when it comes to also your UVs, make sure your UVs are always like within that square, right? Otherwise, things can get wonky when you start baking. Um, but yeah, this isn't a bad setup. Um, I like to do things a little bit more precise, so you can go over here and create a new UV map. I'm going to hide that one, and we'll just call this one like basic one, whatever. I'm going to create a new UV map. I'll call this basic 2, and I can go ahead and keep these seams if I want to, but let's add to it. Let's add a seam along the top. Oh, actually, I'm going to make a quick edit. If you look at this mesh, you see that it's not directly in half. Um, you can make it directly in half, or you can keep it like this. I usually make them directly in half so I have a split line. So I'll use Control R to create an edge loop here, and I'll use the same thing at the top. See here? If it already doesn't have a natural split. This usually won't affect any existing UVs if you're using a model as well. Um, so you should be able to add edge loops for the most part across the board. So I'm gonna go ahead and clear all these seams. Oops, that's add all the seams. Let's add sharp, clear seam. There we go. And now I'm just going to use these seams that I just made here, right? Well, So I'm gonna go ahead and mark those seams. Hit A. I'm in my new UV map here, and I'll go ahead and unwrap. And now I have something that looks a lot more common, right? If I turn it to active, the active camera view, we can take a look at it, and we can see that that looks pretty good. I do get some stretching along this side, but I can turn this a little bit if I want to. So let's just turn it vertical and do that. All right. And I'm gonna use individual, so they scale down together a little bit. I'll switch this back to balance to make sure it fits. Right, so now I've got this here, right? And you can see that it's looking pretty good. But sometimes you want things to follow your stuff a lot better. And this is where you can get into different types of UVs. I usually have a set of UVs for baking and then for texturing, right? So if I'm texturing in like a different program like Substance or whatever, the only thing you want to do is make sure you have UV set up and that they are not overlapping each other. And then you should be fine because you're going to do a lot of your like live painting and stuff directly on there, and it'll just bake the way it's supposed to if you're using Substance. If you're not using Substance, like I'm using Blender for most of my stuff, you might want to have a little bit more control. Like I don't want to have this not match up down here. So in that case, I'll switch this over. I'll make a new texture map real quick. And I'll set this to visual for right now. And say I want to get this in line. So usually you want to try to rectify it, right? And rectify it is basically make it square, right? So I use Text Tools because it's a great app, not just for baking, but UV stuff as well. It's just simple. There's other tools for it that work. So what I normally do is I'll select this section with L, and then I'll hit rectify. Oops, I'll actually hit it. Okay, and there it is. And so now it is very square, right? And this is the back. And if you notice on the back, you can see that it's following the lines that are actually on here, right? Oops, let me turn that back on. You can see that it's following those lines. Now, some of these might overlap each other in certain spots. So this would not be a good thing to use for your actual bake because things will come out weird. But for just setting up a basic texture, you can move it around if you want to. It's pretty solid, right? So you just want that edge to be down there. And when it comes to texturing, especially if it's going to be using like the same like basic map, like a fabric map or something like that, these can overlap. It doesn't even matter. Same thing up here. I'll hit rectify. And now if I look at the front, you can see that everything's kind of following the actual pieces. All right. And this one's a little bit weird here. Let's go on going on here. Also, when you're selecting with L, once you have islands set up, based on whatever your active one is, you can just hit L and then set to UVs, and it will just grab whatever UV you're working on. All right, so we've got this. And so I'm getting this weird thing here, right, that I don't really like. I don't like the way that's doing that. So I'm going to go back to a regular UV unwrap here with this, right? And I'm going to take a look at the actual like UVs and see what's going on. So sometimes just your topology is not set up for a good rectify, because you'll have things like this, these little loop edges right here. So you might want to try to get as much of it as possible rectified, but you can't get all of it. So for something like that, I would select the pieces that would be like square, right? That when they're flattened out, I know they're square. Like these go straight up and down. That's going to be square. That's going to be square. This will be square. This will be square. This will be square. And this will be square. But here, you can see it's definitely not going to be square, right? And that's because this piece will have to overlap for that to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unselect these loops right now. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the top and look for what should be square. right? These ones, even though it curves down, would be square. Oops, let me go ahead and select those. And I'm just holding Alt and then Alt and what am I holding? I think just Alt. Oops. Alt and Shift, right? And that's allowing me to select these other parts. All right, cool. So now I would just go ahead and rectify that. Now when I rectify that, some parts are not really being seen, which is fine. So now I'm going to go ahead and pin these. Well, actually, I'm going to make sure I'm switched to this mode because I just want to have just this stuff. So I'm going to pin those. And then since the only thing that's being selected right now is this front section, and you can only see those here, I'm going to hit A, and then I'm just going to unwrap again. All right, and it pushes those pieces into where they're supposed to be. And even though it's not perfect, it's a little bit better, right? I'm not getting that weird double thing along the edges here. If I wanted to, I can go back in here and make some more adjustments if I want to. So I can grab like the line tool here and grab these lines, and then I can use this option, right? Say I want it to be them all even to the left. I can do that, right? I could take say this option here and make this all even to the right. All right, and maybe I want this one too. Maybe I want all of these, but not that one right there. Oops. To be even to the left, right? Now this might look a little bit funky, or not. Let's see. Let's grab all of these and make them even to the top. I can grab all of these and make these even to the left, to the left. Um, but having like a really clean looking UV doesn't always make things easier. So, oops, I went, or something that looks right, right? So you want to create a texture UV map if you're using textures. Um, the next option is to find like good spacing. But let me go ahead and finish this up real quick. Just grab all these, set these, trying to line them up. Alright, cool. That way I can get a pretty solid. And if you just done an option or operation, you can just hit Shift R and Blender will usually just repeat that operation, whatever it was. Right. And then if you want to, um, let's go ahead and just select this one. I'm gonna hit Control I and hide everything else. And let's say this part isn't really doing it for me. Like this line right here is uh is too low or something like that. I can just check this out. Right, boom, boom. And then if I'm looking at it right here, I can just move it to where it makes sense, right? Do I need to move it down? Okay, in this case, I need to move it down. So let's grab all of these pieces here and let's move. I want, and you just give me a dot. I want this one over big. So I think that's how I have it here. Yeah. So I want to Ah, like that. Yeah. All right, yeah. So this is the one I want to affect here. So where is it? It's this one. I want these ones to be. Ah, so I need to be in this mode. Make those even. There we go. So that way I can move those around a little bit, right? And I can manually space kind of like how I want to look at it. All right, so I move down, and that way my stuff is a lot more even. So you can do some manual manipulation. I've got this. So this would be a good texture UV. And then when it comes time to actually bake, um, I can switch to back to one of these other UVs, right? So ideally, I would probably use this one, and I would just get these. And these can be in whatever place that you want them to be. You can mess with stuff. All right. Right. You can set up how you want to, side by side, etc., etc., etc. All right. So that's just one shirt getting done. Let me go ahead and do a different shirt. Okay. So I've got shirt two. Here's another shirt that I did. This shirt I used the project from view, which sometimes is very helpful. So if you've got like a simple object, you just want the front thing, you just want it to look like that, and it's relatively flat, you can just use the project from view option, which is pretty simple. UV unwrap, right? So we've got this. Let's go ahead and do project from view, and it will just give you just like it is from view, right? Now, this doesn't have any seams either. And even though it looks kind of straight here, let's go ahead and make this a little bit smaller as well. Even though it looks pretty solid, you can see that the stretching on the side is a problem, right? So if the parts, but let's say you want, um, let's go ahead and split it up a little bit, right? Let's go ahead and we'll do the same thing. All right, so I'm going to create UVs. I'm going to create this center line that I don't have already. And this time I'm just going to do the bottom. We're just going to do the bottom on this one. So that center line, this center line, and we'll go ahead and mark those as a seam. A, UV unwrap. Go ahead and make this bigger. And now I've got this. And in this case, you can see that it's pulling, it's just flipping it upside down. So you can take a look to see what that looks like. And in some case, that looks pretty good, right? That does not look bad at all. But I want the sleeves also to be their own thing. I don't want them just like be one old piece of stuff. I want the sleeves to be their own. So for the sleeves, what I would normally say is make sure you're getting the full loop, right? You want to get a nice loop around it. If there one exists, then that's cool. But if one doesn't, just find the best path to use, right? And so in this case, this is probably the best loop that I can get for the shirt. I'm gonna go ahead and mark that seam, and I'll do the same thing here. Make sure that it's connected, and mark that seam. Right, hit A, UV unwrap. Now this is just the top part here, and then I've got my sleeves. Right, and so those look pretty solid. Once again, if I want to go and create like a texture version, I can go ahead texture, turn this on, And let's see what happens when we do the sleeves as a rectify. Oftentimes, for whatever reason, these will also be different, even though they're exact same amount of topology. And I don't know why that is. See, it just switches over like that. And go ahead and rotate them if I want to. If I really need them to be the same size and I can rectify them, what I'll normally do is make sure they're rectified, and then I'll use the fill option. And I'll do the same thing here, fill. And now both of these are pretty much going to be the exact same size, and then I'll just make them smaller, right? And as you can see, I've made them smaller here, and I can make them look however way I want to, right? I can make them wider so they fit more like the sleeve is supposed to. Set it up like that. And you can also see that it's following like the line, the cloth of the sleeve as well. So sometimes that's a good thing. Like the seam up here would be good. That'd be good if you want to do some like UV manipulation later. And these don't have to be on top of each other. You can make them however you want to. All right, oops, make sure you select the whole thing when you do it. For the shirt, we can see what this looks like rectified as well. So let's go ahead and rectify. And for the most part, it looks pretty good. But it looks all weird, right? So I'm like, I don't know if I really want that. Um, what's happening most likely is that this section here, this circle, is what's causing some issues. So you can try to figure out a good way to do it, but in this case, it's probably easier to just split it or just keep it the way it is. You can play around with pinning stuff and straightening stuff, right? So like, let's say I straighten this bottom piece here and then pin it. Now, you usually only see the pins whenever you're in this mode, vertex mode. We're gonna hit L here, and then can I unwrap in here? Nope. Then I'm gonna go over here and unwrap. And it unwrapped everything, so let me hit Control C real quick. Let me make sure only this is showing. So I don't want the sleeves. So I'm gonna hit L, make sure I got UVs or seam set. L, I'm gonna hide these. And now let's try this again. So UV unwrap. And you can see that now it's a little bit straighter. I could do the same thing up here. Let's say I want it to be like in line with this one. Right? I can do that and pin that. And now what it's going to do is try to make everything work within those pins, right? So I got that straight. Maybe I want this edge and this edge to be the same, and this edge and this edge to be the same on the outside. Oops, let me deselect these pieces. Right, select these pieces and then pin those. Right, select it all, hit UV unwrap, and then it's gonna keep doing its thing like that. All right, so maybe I want this part to be at the top. Do the same thing here. Bottom. All right, and you can start to manipulate and control your UVs. Oh no, why is there like a big hole here? There shouldn't be. Okay, so what happened was, um, I deselected, but I deselected using edges instead of faces. So if I like this setup here, right? Say I forgot this, right? Say you deleted a piece, you got a hole in something. This is another thing that you can use to fix it. I can select these sections right here and just pin everything, right? And then select the pieces that I make sure I've got everything that I want selected. So in this case, it's just this shirt pieces, no sleeve, right? Select all of this in here and then just hit UV unwrap and it will put those pieces and just attach them, right? As best as it can. In this case, I would probably fix these a little bit. like so. Right. And then I'll just unpin everything and then just pin what I want to keep. Right. Um, yeah, pin the unwrap. And there we go. Right. But not everything is perfect, as you can tell at the bottom. Right. The stuff is a little bit wonky right here. So it's kind of up to you on how you want to play with it, test it, see what works. Right? Because these pieces, there are UV tools out there where they even out the spacing along these edges. I don't have that app currently installed, so I with that add-on, so I can't do that with these ones, and I'm not sure how it works in here, but it is what it is, right? So there's a lot of different things that you can do to get it set up, but I'm gonna go ahead and unpin this. For this particular one, I would probably just do a regular unwrap the way I normally would, and I don't need to split the sleeve in with two seams. So, but I do want to split the top here. So I'm gonna just grab a line on top, get the line segments, and I usually try to mirror it on this side. Mark seam, UV unwrap, and now I have my sleeves and my shirt and everything is pretty solid. Now, if you are using like a, and oftentimes this looks fine as well, when you're dealing with your stuff. But yeah, so those are some options for you to use for your shirt. Um, Not every shirt is this simple. I made a shirt that's kind of goofy looking, right, for this, and be like, okay, so how do we UV this thing, right? So if I go into edit mode and I just have a regular UV unwrap, this is what we get. We get this. There's three pieces to this thing, right? There's this piece here, and if I select it, you'll see it's just this dot, which isn't going to do me good for texturing. I've got this piece here, which is this wonky looking thing, and then this here, which is just a weird shaped circle. So I don't like any of that. So we do want to get some UVs. So I usually start with the simplest stuff first. So that's going to be this piece. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to hit Control I, hide everything else. And all I want to do with this one, since it's just an even circle, is create one seam. Now, because seams are the parts that are going to be like where things connect, if you can hide them under another piece of thing or where they normally would be, that would be ideal. For stuff like this, I usually will grab a line down the back, right, as center as possible, and then mark that as a seam. Then I'll go ahead and unwrap it, and I'll get this long piece. Because this is very rectangular, I don't have any extra pieces in here, and it's all pretty much quad topology. I can just rectify that pretty easily, and now I've got this. I'll go ahead and set this to the side, hit Alt H to bring everything back, and start with the next piece, right? So the next piece is another band piece right here that I made with the solidify option, but I converted it into actual mesh, so the solidify is here. We're gonna go ahead and do the exact same thing, hide, right? And let's see what happens when I do that. So we'll go ahead and mark that seam, hit A, UV unwrap, and I get this super long line with this weird crap going here, right? So what I probably need to do is split this up, right? So I'm going to split this down the center and then mark that seam and see what I get. When I do that and you look at it, I've got a pretty good split. So basically I'm unfolding it, right? So that it can be unfolded. But I don't want it to be a circle, so that's why I cut this. So this is going to be the unfold line, right? So it's flat open, and then this is going to be separate the ends. So now I've got that. And it doesn't matter that they're really long and big right now. I can adjust that in just a moment. So let's go ahead and bring this back. And now we've got this weird looking shirt thing that I made. So we'll select that. We'll hit hide. And what I'm looking for is parts that are going to break kind of easily. So the easiest one to look at is the sleeves. So what I often do is take a look at the top sleeve and see if I can find a good line to use. And I'm using this line that's really close to the center of this piece. We'll hit mark seam. And then we'll just unwrap it and see what happens. All right, so maybe better, maybe not. We'll see. Let's take a look. So that's not really doing everything that we want. Um, Now this shirt connects like at the center. It's got a weird like little connecty option. Maybe we can split it at that section. So I'll look to see if there's like a loop that's as close as possible to this part. And let's see, maybe this one. Okay, so let's do that. Um, and I'm looking for this little split piece because that most likely means that all the parts below it are just a square. So we'll make a seam here and unwrap it. Okay, so we're getting somewhere. We're not really where we need to be just yet, but we're definitely getting close. I think what I might need to do is split the sleeves up a little bit. And sometimes it's okay to just cut it all up as much as possible while you're trying to figure out where you want things to be in the end, right? So there's a nice loop. I don't really need this loop at the bottom because it's not going to connect to anything. Let's go over here and grab this edge loop. We'll mark those as seams. Unwrap it again. Okay, so we're starting to get pieces, right? We're starting to get pieces. If we hit this button up here, it's the sync button. So what's selected? See if I can make this better. This out of the way a little bit. So what's selected over here is selected here and vice versa. So if I grab a chunk, you can see, oh, that's where it is on the UV map. Grab this here. Oh, it's on those parts, right? My sleeve is looking pretty solid. I can test to see if my sleeve will rectify very well. So I want to make sure I'm using the faces selections for these. And I'm actually going to do them separately. All right, so I'm going to select this one here. Okay. All right, hit A and then rectify. And then I'm going to select this one. I'm going to hit rectify. And in this case, they're relatively the same size. I don't need them exactly the same size right now. I'm trying to figure out where everything is at. This thing here, this is just a circle, but I want it to be a square. So I'm going to split it right down the back here if I can. So I'm going to look for something that's along that crease piece, hit mark seam. And now if I just select that area, I should be able to unwrap just that. Yep, there we go. And this should be a rectangle. So I can hit this and then rectify. And there we go. That's a rectangle. All right. And now we have this thing up top. Not to figure out, okay, how does this piece work? Okay, so that is one piece and this is one piece. So I've got that. I don't think this is a rectangle, but I could test it out and see. So rectify. Oh, turns out it is. Cool. But they're two different shapes for whatever reason. Here we go, rectify. Here we go. And rectify. Oops. Rectify. All right, cool. So let's see what this actually looks like. So we'll turn this on and we've got quads. But one of the issues that we're running into is that the quads are all like different sizes. You don't want your pixels to be all over the place like this. You want them all to be about the same size. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and organize this a little bit. So let's turn it on like this. Grab, oops, make sure it's faces. See what section that is. So this is the back piece. So I want this, and then the other back piece is here. It's like this. So I want these to be working together. So I'm gonna rotate that one. And it looks like this one could probably get rotated one more time. And if I wanted to get these like exactly the same size, one of the things that I can do is I can go up here and say, uh, click on that, and I think I can hit Shift S, yep, and I'll say cursor to selected. And then I think I can hit this and hit Shift S selection, selected the cursor. Oops. Like this maybe? Shift selected the cursor. Nope, I don't want to do that. I'm just gonna manually do it. So I'm just gonna grab this and line it up with that cursor. All right. Doesn't have to be super perfect. But now I'm gonna switch my mode to 2D cursor. All right, so now whenever I do anything, it's going to be using this as my cursor. So I'm going to scale it on the x-axis, which is the red one. All right, and then I can scale it on the y down to here. And it looks like I'm missing a piece for some reason. So I'm just going to bring this down here. And then I'm just going to move it over here. Yeah, it looks like I missed a chunk here. So if I want that chunk back, I can just click on, oopsie, why is this chunk? You don't belong there. Or it shouldn't belong there. Or that's just a weird corner piece. Yeah, I think that's just a weird corner piece. But nonetheless, um, that's one way to kind of get your stuff together. But what I want to do ultimately, aside from all this rectangular stuff and whatever, is to get these checkers all to be about the same size. So to do that, it's pretty simple. In Blender, I can hit A, and then I can right click, and then, is it right click? I don't think it's right click. Nope. Let's go up here to UVs, and I can go to average island scale, and it's going to make them all about the same size, right? And that's that's something that you're going to want to have. I can then go ahead and pack these up, right? But say I don't want their orientation. I like the way that they're facing right now. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and go to, where's it? Pack islands, and make sure I turn off rotate. If I can let them scale if I want to, or I could try not to. Let's leave them without scale. Just hit OK, and there you go. Now I can scale it manually so that it fits. And I'm going to set my just reset my cursor. All right, I just hit Shift C to reset my cursor. All right, and I'm going to turn off use boundaries. Yep. All right, cool. So there we go. These are all really close together, so that's not normally a good thing. So let's fix that as well. So we'll go to Pack Islands. In the margin, I'll put like 001. Should be okay. Let me see. And that's a teeny little bit of space. Let's go with more. Let's see, UV Pack Islands. Let's say 0.01. That might be too much. Actually, that's not bad. In fact, I could probably get away with Pack Islands 0.1. There we go. Yeah, so there we go. Nice. I can use this option to fill, and what that does is it tries to make sure it fills in the UVs perfectly. But I'm going to make them all just a little bit smaller so I know they're all on my texture map. All right. Some of this might look like it's stretching a little bit, which it might be. I'm not sure. This is a weird one. So you can play with it a little bit to see what might be going on. Yep, and what's happening is for whatever reason, this is not evened out. And to be honest, I don't know how to do that within this mode. But like I said, there's other tools that can be used. That's sort of like a relax tool that didn't really help me. Let's see. I don't think Iron Faces. Iron Faces just takes things back to the way they were before. Um, what is Unwrap U? Unwrap V? I guess that's you can do a vertical unwrap or a horizontal unwrap, which is kind of cool, I guess. I haven't played with that too much. It's already set to rectified, so it's not going to do much more. Yep, so that's all I know how to do with this one. Um, Smooth by UV Island. Whoa, I don't know what that is. Hit Control Z. But yeah, so you can play around with it. But if you are using, so usually what I'll end up doing is have a texture UV just like this one, and then I'll create like a bake texture, and it will look a lot more like this. Just go ahead and average islands. And so whenever I bake, I'll make sure that this is selected, and whenever I'm actually playing with my textures, I'll have this one. And like I said, if you are using Substance or a different type of painting app, usually you don't need to worry about anything except for UVs not overlapping. And you can check for overlap with textiles. If it was overlapped, like say this one here, it's over top like here, hit overlap, it'll show you which ones are overlapped. Sometimes it could be as simple as I think like just one squares, you know, like that. Well, oh, that's not, it's not detecting that one. Okay. But I've seen all kinds of different overlap situations. But yeah, so that's it for shirts. Shirts are pretty simple. Um, you're just gonna pretty much catch that line. This one is a little bit more. You're gonna might have to play around with if you got a unique design, but it's all something you can do pretty easily. And we look it all together. We've got this whole thing set up. So let's go back here for a second. Um, go to edit mode. Make sure I've got all my pieces. So I'm gonna hit Alt H. So everything is showing up again. And if I go in here, you'll see that uh, it looks pretty good, but these UVs are all over the place. I couldn't use this for baking. If I go into texture mode, it still isn't working, right? So what I want to do is make sure these pieces, all these pieces, are set up correctly. I think, yep. So this one, we go back to text tools. I want to rectify, and then I'm going to go ahead and average islands. And if I want to see what that looks like, I can go back in here to see that. Right, and I want all of these islands to be about the same. Let's say I wanted them all just in a row. I could, well, let's go ahead and pack them. And I'm not rotating in this case, but okay. But let's turn the scale on for this one. Pack islands, and we'll set the scale. And I'll set this to 0.1. Say okay. There we go. So now all the density for all this stuff is going to be the same. and we'll be good to go. Now, if for some reason you got parts that you don't need, say you want to make space in your one UV map, you're combining some materials together, you can take things that are relatively unimportant. Like let's say I don't have very much detail on this band here. I can go ahead and make it a lot smaller, or a lot bigger, or a lot smaller. So the UV space that's actually taken up will be very small. All right, so I'm gonna oops, hit A, and now I can find a spot for this little piece. All right, just drop it in there. Say I want to make sure, say this piece is pretty cool, but I don't need it to be all that big. I could take that and make that smaller, right? Now, this is going to be how much, like, the bigger this is, right, the more pixel detail I could get in here. I mean, relative to whatever size that I set, right? So if I set this to 4K, right, I'm going to get 4K's worth of this square. But if I set it down to something like 64 or something like that, it's just, no matter how big it is, it's going to be just that portion of 64 pixels. So you can play around with like density based on what you actually want, what you need. Average, usually put everything back to the way it should be. And then you can go ahead and pack your stuff. When you're dealing with your texture stuff, it might be a good idea to keep everything uh, nice and set up like this. When you're dealing with this section, we still want to use the average option, but we don't need to worry about how things are laid out unless you specifically want to. Right, so in this case, I can set up rotation to be anything, scale anything, and that way you should try to maximize space across the board. Right, and there we go. And then this would be what I would use to like pack all my stuff into. Right. Sometimes it looks fine, sometimes it doesn't. It's up to you to take a look. But those are the ways that I would approach UVing and UVs for textures. If we look at pants, I've got two sets of pants. I got a quick box style pants that I made. This is just the generic box UV that I started with. And if I go to edit mode, you'll see it's just these two planes. That's not going to work, so I'm going to hit unwrap. Now I got two circles. That's not going to work either. Pants are usually pretty easy. I just do a seam down the side. Like so. Make it over here. If you're not sure if they're matched up, I like to go into X-ray mode and be like, oh, okay, make sure I've got the seams that would only match up. Okay. For the center one, I'm going to go ahead and clear these out real quick. The sides, this is perfect. Go ahead and mark the seam. Turn off X-ray mode real quick. For the center, I want the easiest thing is to find something that's just going to go through the entire thing. So in this case, let's see. All right, I'm just going to make a new loop with Control R and mark that seam. We go ahead and unwrap it. We've got a very traditional scene. Now, oftentimes you'll get this situation where the pants are with their legs spread. If you don't want that, you could also, since most pants do split at the center, you can just run a seam through the center of your stuff, hit mark seam, and then do it that way. Now you've got pants that look more like pants from like a sewing pattern. And I think I've seen some developers like stitch it together. There's some add-ons that will allow you to like stitch things better. I think Blender does too, but I'm not as well versed with that. Um, but yeah, these are pretty good. Trying to get the perfect seams for this can sometimes be tough. So let's see what this looks like. Yeah, so we've got where we've got this like little bunching in the butt and whatever. So you might want to try to get that rectangular option if at all possible. So let me go ahead and oh, and once you set up your seams, you can go ahead and make a UV map. But if you get rid of these seams, right, they're just gone. Okay, they're just gone. And if you still have your UV maps, right? But the seams will be gone. So you can make new UV maps with new seams if you want to. So what I'm going to do here is, I think this is a square loop, and this be a square loop. All right, and I'll go ahead and mark that seam, and then I'm going to go along the inside of these pieces here and do that. And I'm going to keep this one not connected like that. So we'll hit mark seam. So this should unfold these two pieces as just squares, right? So let's go ahead and unwrap. And there we go. So we've got these two pieces that are just the legs. Now let's see. Let's say we want, so this piece up here, if we look at it, it's all like two leg holes and stuff. Now you're not limited to just finding seams on the mesh out here. You can go, well, if you're using Blender, you can turn on the sync mode and say, okay, well, what happens if I just split this here, right? You'll notice that it connects and creates that same thing here, right? Unclick it, unclick it. So we'll do that, and we'll mark a seam. Let's try this, UV unwrap. Okay, so it kind of like split it in half a bit, but I don't think that's really exactly what I want. So let's maybe split one side of it, right? So split like from here. Mark seam. All right, cool. So that opens the pants up. And depending on what you're working with and how you're working on it, that might give you what you want. Um, or it might not. Okay, in this case, my stuff is definitely not average, so let's just average real quick so I get a good idea. And there's videos out there on how to like merge your UVs together and do a bunch of different stuff like that. But I try to keep things relatively basic. I usually will go with this type of setup for the most part. With my legs like this. Let's see. Now, oh, a good thing to note is that if you did get rid of your seams, like my seams are not what they were to make this, um, I can clear, and this usually works, I'm pretty sure it works. I can go ahead and clear, set the seams. I'm gonna go ahead and clear my seams, right? And I can go over here with the in-sync mode on and select this and select bounds. And this will select the edges of my islands. And then because they're selected over here, I can go ahead and hit mark seam. So I could bring those seams right back. All right, and maybe I want to play with it a little bit more. Maybe I'm like, okay, let's split it in half, but maybe not in the center. Turn off X-ray. Make clear seam. And now let's run. And because I don't want to lose this UV map in those spots, I'm just going to go to a different one, right? And I think you can have like 8. You can't, they're not unlimited, but you can at least, I think you can have like at least 8 of them. UV unwrap. And now I've got 2 leg pieces like this. And if I set it to view, I can get a kind of idea of what that would look like. Or maybe I can hit Control Z, go back. do the same thing. Select bounds, mark seam. But let's go ahead and get rid of the center seam. We'll go ahead and clear seam. Let's go ahead and make a new one because I UV or Control Z my way out of it. All right. And now that splits it like that. And I'm like, oh, that's not really what I want. So I go ahead and clear seam. And I can stay in this UV map for a second. Go over here to this one. Do the exact same thing with the bounds if I want to. Select bounds. Mark seam. Go back to this UV that I'm working with. Let's see. I want my center pieces to match up perfectly. Seam. Right. I much rather value this even if it's a little bit off. Let's see, what if I do, oops. Let's play around with this a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna grab that line. Actually, let me just grab one of these. All right, so I'm gonna grab, and now I'm just kind of like playing around. Let me undo the top part. We'll set this here. All right, grab this one. We'll set this here. I'll pin those. See what I get. Oh, look, so there we go. So now I've got some straight leg pants. All right, and so my stuff looks straight along the top, looks straight along the bottom. That looks kind of cool. I'm going to do the same thing for the back side. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing this line here. I'm leaving space in the center. I'm getting rid of that, and I'm making this at the highest point. So I'm using this line up here. You got to be in the line select mode for that to work. Selecting that, bring that down, pinning these, and then unwrap. And there we go. Nice. And then I guess if I want this part, so let's say I want, let's see if this works. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to try to make them all here. So I'm going to go ahead and straighten this down like this. And then I'm going to pin this one. Let's see what happens. All right, look, it pushed it in there. So I'm going to Control Z real quick. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. All right, and pin that. Okay, but this centerpiece looks all junky, right? We don't like that. So maybe I can just make it wider. All right, there we go. Nice. Oh, but I don't have a straight top here, so we can do that. Pin that. All right, cool. Now, I think I can use the relax tool to kind of even out some of this stuff in here. So I think I'm going to grab this piece right here real quick and make that straight and pin that. Maybe unwrap. And then I think he uses the little relax guy. Want us to grab, where's relax? Here. Let's see what happens. So if I relax it, it should be trying to even everything out, which sometimes makes it better and sometimes doesn't. Looks like I'm having an issue with this centerpiece. So yeah, you can spend forever messing with this stuff. Um, I need to look around and see if there is a better way to control the spacing to make them even. Um, because I'm pretty sure that there is. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head. But yeah. So there's all that. Another thing I guess I could do as well is if I found out that this is all um pretty square, right? Is I could do a similar thing than what I did before. Why does this look like it's whatever, right? I could select all these pieces. So in this case, let's go ahead and select everything but the center. Right, this center line here is definitely not square. The rest of this should be, right? Well, before I do that, let me unpin everything. And I'm just gonna grab these outer edges real quick. And I'm gonna use Control Plus to just grow everything to where it should be in the center. And I'm gonna go ahead and rectify. All right. I'll pin this, select all these, UV unwrap. All right, so the inside isn't straight like I want it, but that's fine. I can just do what I did earlier. And let's see, we'll do the center. All right, so there we go. So now I've got my pants looking on like so. So there is a lot of things you can do with your UVs to play with things around. You're just gonna have to learn. Um, just test, have fun with it, see what you get. All right, be like, okay, I want it tighter. You can grab a section, turn on like proportional editing, and make adjustments that way. You can wheel down. I can wheel down the amount of impact, right? So if I scale it on the Y, it's just gonna have that small amount of impact. If I make the Y bigger, have a larger. So you get a lot of freedom for a lot of different things. So that's just how I would do seams. I know I probably went way more in depth than I intended to, but it is really relatively simple across the board. Here's another pair of pants I made. Uh, the process, I'll just do the process I do. It's like just 2 seconds. I'm like, is there a center line? Okay, there is a center line. Use this one. Oh, and I usually use it like this anyways, so we're good. Let's rectify them one at a time, see if that makes a difference. No, it's just a weird thing. Oh, these ones are a little bit more complicated because I have like a crotch line. So yeah, so like I said, I can go on forever, but I got things to do today, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump off for now. But those are just some tips that I've got for UV unwrapping.